Good evening, everybody. Good evening. My name is Chris Lockwood. I am Director of NEHS and the ELA Honour Society, and it's a very great pleasure, as always, to welcome ELA, NEHS, Sigma Kappa Delta, and Sigma Tau Delta student members and chapter advisors to this very, very special webinar with EP Tuazon, who is the author of A Professional Lola and winner of the 2024 Grace Paley Prize in short fiction. Some quick housekeeping notes just to make your viewing experience even more pleasurable. It may be useful to click on the full screen button, which is top right corner of your screen. And if you want to react to this evening's discussion, please feel free to do so using the emoji icons that are at the bottom of the screen. Before the webinar begins, I want to make some important thank yous. So thank you to Naaman Kent, Katie Mudd, and Jessica McCall, who have worked behind the scenes to ensure this is going to be a great success. So thank you, Naaman, thank you, Katie, thank you, Jessica. And I'd also like to present tonight's interviewer, Tara Ann Carter. So Tara is an English teacher at Milken Community School in Los Angeles. She hails from Philadelphia. She holds a BA in English from Millersville University and an MA in non-traditional literature from Villanova. And she started her career as a dual certified English and social studies teacher with the Philadelphia Teaching Fellows before moving on to independent education in Florida and then in California. In her free time, Tara enjoys reading memoirs, long-distance running, exploring contemporary art near her home in Los Angeles, and, as you'll see from this webinar, hopefully interviewing writers. We're very excited that Tara will be conducting tonight's interview with EP, and we are very, very grateful for everything that she does to support NEHS through her work on the Advisory Council. So thank you very much, Tara. Okay, well, without further ado, let me pass you guys over to Los Angeles, Tara and EP Tuazon.
Lunch Ticket, Peatsmoke, and 5 South. His work was chosen by ZZ Packer as the winner of the 2022 AWP Grace Paley Prize in short fiction. They are currently a member of Advintage Press and the Blank Page Writing Club in the open book Canyon Country. In their spare time, they like to go to the Filipino sea markets to gossip with the crowds. Hi, EP. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing, Tara?
Not bad. Staying cool on this hot LA day.
I know. There's fires everywhere.
Yeah. So we're here today. We've gathered some questions from really around the world, from our members across different chapters. And we're going to just kind of go through them, have a conversation, and see what comes of it. You ready?
Sounds great. Yeah.
All right. So our first question comes from Devin Malone from the British Virgin Islands. And Devin asks, what inspired you in your journey to become an author? Did anyone help you while you became a writer in any way, and how?
Devin, that's such a great question. And I'm asked this question about how I started, and it's I think there isn't it was really like a quick progression. I thought writing was stupid when I was in high school. All my friends wrote, and I told them like anybody could do that. So I would write to make fun of them, and then it just so happens what I wrote people liked, and like I just kept doing it, and joke's on me, I guess, because I kept doing it. And I have to thank I believe that in order to be a good writer, you have to read. And I have to thank my parents for never giving me blank paper to draw on. They always gave me newspapers and magazines to draw on as a kid. So I ended up like reading like the articles and the magazines while I was drawing, like inadvertently. So they kind of tricked me into reading. So yeah, if your parents ever did that, I'm sorry they tricked you kids. Sorry about that.
All good teaching is really trickery. We won't tell the students at home. So jokes and tricks is what got you into writing.
Definitely.
Yeah. Was there anyone besides your parents establishing that sort of foundation of literacy? Was there anyone else that was particularly pivotal in your early career when you were beginning to take it seriously?
I didn't really have a mentor when it came to writing. I had friends who were writing around the same time as me. So I was never really alone, as in like not knowing any other writers, but eventually everybody stopped except for me. So I don't know. I don't know what kept me going, actually. It's just, I think inherently as a writer, you just feel the need to. It doesn't matter why.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to get the words down.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a true vocation, it sounds like. And additionally, I think it's an interesting thing to note that you say I didn't really have a mentor, just to kind of showcase the different options that are available for how one goes about approaching writing professionally. That you could be in a group, you can have a mentor, or really you can strike out on your own until you're able to connect with a publishing company. You can do it in so many different ways.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Shall we move on?
Yeah.
All right. So the second question comes from Aranza Rodriguez from Mexico. And they want to know, how did you come to choose writing as a job? Maybe another way to phrase that is, how are you living while being a writer?
Well, I'm sorry to break a lot of people's hearts who want to become a writer. Writers hardly make any money, if at all. A lot of us do other things while we write in order to support our passions. Some of us choose to go into academia. Some of us do something totally different. There's a lot of doctors that were writers, like Anton Chekhov is the famous doctor writer, although he made more money as a writer than as a doctor back then, which is kind of backwards now. but yeah, like but when you go into the arts, when you go into something like writing, it's not about the money. Well, at least to me. I mean, you can make a lot of money if you become, but like only a few, like a minute 1% of writers really make a lot of money. Like those Stephen Kings and Pattersons out there who have like whole franchises behind their name. But most of us are just trying to earn a living while also doing the thing that we love.
Sure. Yeah, and again, a testament to really like this internal pull that you feel to do it. It's really incredible. Rebecca Goetz from California wants to know, what does your writing process usually look like? What's your favorite part of writing and/or storytelling?
Oh, writing to me, when you're starting out, you think about form, you think about like beginning, middle, and end for a story. But really, lately, when reflecting on writing, I think about like how stories just arbitrarily start. They naturally start to come into form. I just think about it where like you're given a rock one day, and then you're chiseling at this rock and you're uncovering something buried beneath that thing that you're trying to figure out what's there. I'll give you an example. When I wrote the title story to my collection, Professional Lola, I thought of something completely arbitrary sparked that story. Like I just saw some guy carrying a mattress on the street one day, and that made me think about the whole story for the title story of this book, and it has nothing to do with what the main plot of the title story. So things could happen. Things come out of nowhere. Haruki Murakami, famous Japanese writer, he started writing out of nowhere when he saw a fly ball one night when he was walking, and he was like, you know what? I'm going to be a writer. And that was it.
Last year for our webinar series, I interviewed Kate Noon, who wrote The Botanist's Daughter, which was one of our common reader selections. And someone asked a similar question, and she remarked upon the spark of that story being like a day that she was in a botanical garden with her daughters. and she was looking at a plant in the garden, and then her mind started wondering about, like, what if there was a girl that had a father, and then there was a history, and she recounted that tale, and it sounds like there's this sort of common thread of the little seed that becomes the much greater plant.
Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta pay attention to it, because there's so many ideas that get lost, and there's a lot of ideas. Like I was talking to someone in our writing club the other day. She wrote down these notes, and then she looked at it at the end of the day when she had the chance to write something of it, and she totally forgot what she meant by what she wrote, and it totally became something new. So, take your sparks.
That's so cool.
Yeah, your sparks will turn into everything and like nothing at the same time. Like, it's all about you using it, and I think that's one of the most important things as a writer, is to pay attention. Yeah,
your sparks can surprise you.
Definitely.
I like that. And so the next question we have comes from Sophia Edmondson in Texas, as well as this is I guess it's combined, or they both asked a similar question, as well as Tyler Nelp. And Sophia's from Texas and Tyler's from Pennsylvania. And they would like to know, what book of yours did you enjoy writing the most? Maybe you could talk about like short story, like do it in that way.
Oh, shorts. Well, I've written a couple of books, but this probably has to be the most fun. This one was the most fun because I was writing a lot of stories connected to my family, and I got to, it gave me a reason to talk to my family more and like incorporate like them in the creative process, where I never used them, like not used, but like I never collaborated with my family in any of my art before. That my family is not, they're not a family of writers or readers at all, but I like to think that they're good at telling stories. So talking to them about the types of stories that I'm writing, and trying to incorporate some of the stories they told me about, and try to make something new out of them that resonates with people like us, was a really rewarding process. It was fun and rewarding, and I wouldn't trade it. It was a great experience, and it still is. I think it's made me closer to my family. I mean, we were pretty close already, but it was a fun thing to do.
I love that. Yeah. Oh gosh, I hesitate because I don't want to get into talking about the stories, because that's not really the point of this webinar. But I have to say that, you really can kind of see the connection and the love shining throughout, and like in the way that you present your family to the world.
Oh,
and I think
I'm glad.
a wonderful thing. Yeah. But I digress. We'll move on. Desi in Rwanda would like to know, how do you approach blending different elements together while maintaining a cohesive narrative in your short stories? I think this was particularly interesting because you have so much sort of like magical realism and stuff happening.
Yeah, that's such a great question, too. And, I like to believe that life is strange. It's stranger than we could ever imagine. And things come together a lot more than they fall apart. And it's all about piecing them together. When you think, I like to think about writing like dreaming. When you dream, everything's just a jumble. It's a mess. But like when you're remembering the dream, you're trying to make sense of it. You're putting it together, and you're really weaving that mess together into something cohesive that you could share. And I think that's what good storytelling does, whether it be magic realism or realistic fiction or whatever. Just weaving those things together is really important. But that's a really good question. I really like that one.
That was a really beautiful answer also. We have Sabrina Burns from New Jersey, and Sabrina asks, "What story ideas made the cut for A Professional Lola, and which ones didn't? And how did you determine that difference?"
Oh, that's another
How did
good
you cut?
question. This was a longer, this was definitely a longer collection. I was trying to put as many stories in it, but I also had to think like how much does the reader need to breathe? How much, like, what's the balance for a good collection? I wanted to make my collection circular, so like it has a good beginning and good end to come all the way around. Like, and I wanted to have like it to thematically flow together in a way where, like, even though the stories are not connected, there is a natural progression in theme to the ultimate end. It's like a lot more playful in the beginning, and then it gets I think more tender, more there's more open-ended things as you push along in the story. In the collection. So thinking about that was really important. Of the stories that I left out, I actually created a whole new collection. So that actually helped me out, because like picking the stories that I didn't want to use, and then thinking in my head, like, how am I going to use these stories later on if I want to make another collection, really got my brain going. And I put another manuscript together, and actually I just sold it 2 weeks ago. So I have a new book coming
Congratulations!
Thank you. New book coming out probably by 2027, hopefully. Fingers crossed. We'll see if everything goes well.
Wow, that's breaking news. You heard it here first. That's so awesome. I can't wait to read it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you like this collection, I don't know how much I could say what my publisher is probably not wanting me to say, but yeah, it's, if you like this collection, you'll like the next one. So that's all I could say.
Yeah. If you like this, you'll definitely like that. That's fantastic news. I think I may have devoured this in like a Saturday afternoon. Like, I couldn't put it down. It's both that readable, but also like compact enough that you could, spend a couple hours with it, get to know the characters. I would say that the middle becomes very intimate as well. Like, you're sort of like opening up the world and then like allowing us to step into it slowly, which I feel the thoughtfulness behind it, and I guess I didn't really ever think about the circularity, but yeah, that's like intentional. I think is that's cool.
I think
as an English teacher, I like thinking about that kind of stuff.
Me too. And like,
yeah.
I like reading collections or novels where it's closed off at first, and then it gets more intimate in the middle, because like all the masks are down, all like everything they're trying to hide is gone, and they're trusting you. The writer is finally trusting the reader to go forward and see the story for what it is and the characters for what they are. And I like that myself, to read that, and I want to do that myself. So
you're emulating things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
So are there any stories that were cut from or set aside, let's say, from A Professional Lola that are not going to go into this other collection that's been picked up either, that you've completely scrapped? And did you have any sort of process with that you may be able to guide an aspiring writer about?
For the stories that don't make the cut, they're not bad stories. They just don't blend well with other stories that you write. And I don't think you should, as a writer, you should never throw away anything. I think you should keep everything, and don't be afraid to reuse things. A lot of great prolific writers reuse a lot of things. Bringing up Haruki Murakami again, he keeps writing the same things over and over again. FYI. Or Sherman Alexie also reuses some of the same tropes and characters a lot. He wrote like the Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. If most high schoolers know that book, but he's written a lot of adult fiction as well and short stories. So a lot of never throw anything away. Like if you're trying to be a writer and you're even the writing that you're embarrassed of, like reading after 5 years or something, don't throw that away either, because that's important. It shows like your growth and how far you've come, and you can reuse those ideas anytime you want. Like you can do anything with what you created.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you for that. So we have Alejandra Montoya in Mexico. I would like to know, how do you start writing a book? Where do you usually start?
You put the words down first. Honestly, yeah. I mean, like for me, you really have to like make it adventure. When I'm writing a longer piece, like a novel, to me that's like a lifetime. And to prepare for a lifetime takes a lot of like preparation and everything like that. With a short story collection, you just jump right in, you know, and there's no expectations for you to do that. And for a longer piece or a collection, you're trying to figure out where are you going. You're making the map, and then you're trying to figure out like where are the stops in your in your journey to where you're going. So for me, like it's good to have like a good endpoint. Like where do you want? What do you? For me, when I created this collection, I thought about what's my first story and what's my last story, and then how do I want to form that in between. So that was a really good question too. I didn't really think about that myself until now.
Do you set goals for yourself when you write? Like, do you do like word count, page count? I'm going to get a story done, or do you just let it flow? How do you approach that element of it?
Yeah, that's a good question. When it comes to writing short stories, I hold myself to like a week. I have a writing club that meets Tuesday nights, and then a writing club that meets on Sundays. And I try to finish a story before the following Tuesday night, and then I get to talk to my Tuesday night group about the story and workshop it. So that I hold myself accountable. Usually, short stories like 4,000 words. Yeah, when I try to write, like if it's a longer piece, I try to write a chapter a week or a short story a week. I was on a roll until I took a little break, writing a short story a week for like a year. So it's like,
wow. Yeah,
like, but just keeping that pace, and in order to write like anything you love, like anything that matters, you have to make time for it. So definitely finding the time to make that time for yourself is really important. So make that time if you want to write. For me, writing at night or in the morning is really good, or at McDonald's. It's good.
This kind of leads into our next question. We're dancing around it. Jessica Ford in Georgia asks, what's the hardest part about starting and continuing? Maybe you could talk a little bit about procrastination, how that takes form in your life, and how do you get yourself motivated?
Yeah, writing is painful, and the natural instinct of any human being is to like run away from things that are painful, or like forget, or like something you have an idea and you want to put it down, but like you're so confident you just want to put it. You think you could put it off, but my best advice is don't. I mean, of course you're gonna do that, but
sure.
But you have to understand the risk of waiting, is that ideas change. Like I mentioned earlier, like you could write something down. Like a colleague of mine wrote something down, and then when she came back to it, it was completely different. She'd completely forgotten what her ideal was, except for the words. So realize that the risk is that things will change for good or bad, and sometimes you need to wait to find the right words. Sometimes you need to live to find the right words, and but don't be afraid to put something down. Like if you're putting words down, that's the most important part, because you could put words down anytime, but when you put words down in that moment, it's encapsulated in that moment, and you could always refer back to it. Not putting a word down, you have nothing, nothing there for you. So when you have the opportunity and you can do it, I think that's it. That's the thing that keeps motivating me, is like the fear that I'm going to lose something. But I mean, the reality is that you are going to lose some things, but there's always going to be new things. There's always going to be new things.
Yeah. Wonderful. I think sometimes, both knowing that other people are in the struggle with us and having a little you can do it. Both of those things really can.
Yeah, for the longest time, I used to do a National Novel Writing Month, and it was a great motivation because you're part of this community who is writing a novel in a month, like 50,000 words in a month, and everybody's like rooting each other on. So that's a really good motivator too to keep going. Is like you're seeing everybody like push ahead, and also people struggle like you, which is really good. You kind of lift each other up.
Yeah, there's a community. That's awesome. Yeah, I think you started with saying, I didn't really have a mentor, but you definitely are part of something larger than yourself. It may not be someone that's in a kind of looking over you position, but you're connected with people who are giving you feedback and, you're talking through this stuff with, which it sounds like is a key part of your process.
Yeah, I think that's really important for any writer, is to not internalize everything. Being able to speak to an audience is really important. Sharing your works with other people could help you find things that you didn't really think about. So, like, use every opportunity. It's also like great to, it's very seldom that you find writers you could hang out with. There's a lot of people with egos and things like that. But if you meet a good group who's just like kind, I think that's the most important thing in our group, is that we are kind. We're constructive, but we're also kind, and that kindness is what keeps us together. As opposed to being like egotistical writers.
Yeah. I think that's also just good life advice. Surround yourself with kind people.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So let's see. We've talked about motivation. Okay. This is a shade of what we've been discussing. Bethany Daigle in Colorado asked, what do you do when you can't find a character's voice?
Oh, what do you do when you can't find a character's voice? You know what? Actions speak louder than words. Thinking about the situation and what they're faced with and what they're doing, how they treat other characters they interact with, how they treat the world. That's definitely how I find my characters a lot. I usually think about people, amalgamations of people I've met, not necessarily specific people, but like a mixture of people. I like to think about real people, if that makes any sense. Like, what would a real person do, as opposed to a caricature? Because caricatures, they're like so static. They're bland. Like somebody is like always like evil. Like sure, it's like a dependable character that's easy to imagine, but there's no complexity there. It's almost boring to me. So I like to think about the complexities of a person, a person who is kind to people, but could also be very cruel, But again, I think about, I'm digressing. I'm thinking about a character already, but like thinking about how real people change and real people interact with the world depending on their situation is really important. Yeah, that's how I find a voice.
Yeah, I like the idea of starting with actions. That's really good advice. I wrote that down to use when I'm coaching kids. Seriously, I think that's like a smart thing. You can even just like write down verbs.
Yeah, I was just teaching a kid because we were going through imagery and using the 5 senses, and I was teaching a kid how fun you could have writing a story just from starting with the most basic thing, like waking up, and we wound up creating like, so what's the conflict? What's the problem when they wake up? Oh, their alarm's going off. And then like, so what goes beyond that? Well, the alarm won't turn off. So he tries like, so what are the different conflicts involved in that? What do you try to do to make the alarm go off? And he came up with all like, he tried turning it off like with the button, he tried unplugging it, he tried banging it, he tried putting it in the tub, and still wouldn't turn off. So like just like keep going. Like it's so fun. Writing's supposed to be fun. I think that's the thing I like to impart on any student of mine.
It's painful, but it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah. Once you get going, once you get going, you get excited, you get it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the thin line between the two. Yeah. I'm looking at where we can go with this next. I think we'll hear from Jade Maxwell in Illinois. Jade's asking, is it difficult to stay dedicated to writing one work, or are you able to work on multiple projects at once? So you talked a little bit about doing like the short story a day, but tell us a little bit about how your brain works. What do you do? How do you organize your
That's a very good question. And working on multiple projects isn't exactly what I think about. I do, but I like to let a story after I wrote it. After I write it and like workshop it once, like I try to leave it alone and then come back to it later. So I kind of like have a routine where I'm writing like a story, and then I'm like, while I'm writing that story, I'm editing a story that I wrote like 2 weeks before. If that makes sense. Like I'm trying to because like you can't, when you edit a story and you're too in it, you're gonna miss all the things that are wrong with it. You got to kind of like look at it with a fresh pair of eyes, and it's even better when you're working on something else already while you're revising something else, because what you're doing in the new story is something you could have done before sometimes. So when like keeping yourself working and active and writing kind of gets you in that mindset of like you're always working on improving, you're always working on getting better personally for yourself. So that's the way I look at it. There's a lot of errors you catch when you just give it a week or 2 weeks. So a lot of like aha moments to a story, for like a story that you think just needed that extra nudge. So definitely work on stories and then revise old stories at the same time. That's my thing. So
while you're working on new stories, revising old, doing this simultaneously, how do you deal with avoiding being too self-critical and staying inspired despite the self-sabotage of criticism. Madeline Polhos in Mexico wants to know.
Oh, I'm all about imposter syndrome. I mean, that's
Aren't we all?
like,
Aren't we all?
I mean, our biggest critics are ourselves, and that just means you have the potential to grow. And if you don't have, you have a growth mindset, and I don't think you should see that as a negative. I think you should see that as a positive, because you're always looking to learn. You're always open to new ideas. Having that growth mindset is going to serve you well. But again, also, you should celebrate. Take time to enjoy the things that you create. Take time to like bask in finishing a story. A lot of people don't finish things that they start. Some people never will. And just completing something, getting a word out, having an idea is magical and important, and means something, because you're growing every day and you're becoming a better writer every day. You're becoming a different writer every day. So always, relish the good things. You're always going to beat yourself up. We got to live with that. But that just means we're growing. That means we're getting better. We're open to becoming better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the point you made about you finished something and that's a big deal, or that you completed it at all, is super important. This last spring, I had the honor of attending a luncheon where a student won a essay competition, and it was like about social media and freedom. It was like an essay type thing. And one of the speakers that came up to greet the winners said something that has resonated with me, and then the student later mentioned it, that she continued to remember it as well. And the woman started her speech by saying, there are people that could have won this prize besides you, but they didn't even bother to write the essay. And I think that's absolutely correct, right? There's a lot of people who are just as brilliant as you and I, but the fact that you have chosen to write them down, edit them, publish them is, a great feat, and something that takes a lot of work and, time and effort. And it doesn't, as we're going through this, you're really demonstrating that it doesn't happen while there is magic behind it. It also is a deliberate thing that you have to see through. You have to nurture it, and you have to see it through from the beginning to end.
Definitely.
And showing up is half the battle.
Yeah, exactly.
As with anything.
Like everything, art writing is subjective. Not everybody's going to like what you do. But when you do, I think that's definitely important. That's more important than anything, honestly.
Yeah, very true. Do you have specific works that inspired you leading up to the creation of a professional Lola? Do you have the kind of like watermarks or mentor texts that you thought through?
Really, it was just kind of my family, my life in particular. I think this is the most personal kind of fiction that I've written in my entire life so far. I think that for a long time, I thought that writing about my culture and myself was a cop-out. Like I don't want to make it performative. I didn't want to take advantage of being a Filipino minority just because, I didn't want to use that as a crutch to tell a story. But I can't ignore who I am. I think ignoring who I was the biggest mistake as a younger writer. Not writing about my culture was a big mistake when I was a younger writer. Like I mentioned before, my philosophy now, for a long time now, has been to embrace everything in your writing. Try to incorporate everything you can, and especially the things that you love. I thought I was protecting the thing that I love the most, my culture, my family, but I wasn't. I wasn't celebrating them. Now I am. I'm celebrating. I'm celebrating everything about me and my culture and my family, my life. Celebrating everybody, like everything that I love. Just went into these stories, and I think that's the most important thing. It's a celebration. I forgot the question. Well, did I answer the question?
You absolutely answered the question. What they asked, what works inspired you? The way that I would formulate this is that the book of your life inspired you.
Yeah, definitely. But if it comes to like authors that I really love, that I really tried to emulate throughout my life, I started reading like the early American literature. Nathaniel Hawthorne stories really inspired me when I was younger, and then I got into reading everything Sherman Alexie and Sandra Cisneros. Those two are like my spirit parents. Just like I read all their work, and then I got really into Raymond Carver, and like Raymond Carver kind of taught me about like the formation of words is important. I mean, my contemporaries too. Like I'm a really big fan of Percival. I mean, Percival Everett's not an old writer. I mean, not a new writer.
Yeah,
he's been writing forever, but like he's still writing. Like, I mean, not to say Cisneros and Sherman Alexie are not writing anymore, but he's just pumping them out. Percival Everett can't lose. Like everything I read from him is like ridiculous, awesome. But like I try when you emulate somebody, like this is important for every writer to know. Like when you emulate some like your favorite writer, when you fail to emulate them, that's when you find your voice. That's when you find your real self as a writer. Because in that failure those are the nuances of who you are, honestly. And it took me a while for me to get that as a writer, but you get it. I think some people, it's funny because when I read a young writer's work and I could tell they already have a voice, and I wonder where they got it from. It's always the same answers. They emulated somebody's voice, that they admired, they read, and I think that's really important to find that voice. Like find yourself in other people.
That could be like a great writing assignment as well. Like challenge yourself. Pick your favorite writer, open up a book. Now you try to write it yourself.
Yeah. There was this form of writing, teaching people how to write, this grammar book called Image Grammar. They used it to teach maybe like 18 years ago, 15 years ago. But the people would emulate classic lines from classic literature and like write the same sentence structures of classic literature. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know why it fell out of popularity. I think it's too much to do that.
Yeah. I don't know. Among the many things that we have shifted in pedagogy. I think though that I love that you're full of great advice, truly, like to both students, but to maybe I want to start writing short stories after this. I kid you not. I have all of the tools I need now. You've told them to me. Do you think this kind of connects to what we've been talking about? With finding your voice and stuff like that. Outside of a voice, and maybe like your characters, what are essential parts of writing a story? And this question comes from Turkey, from a student named Yusul Ozor.
Oh, cool.
Do you have rules for what has to be in a short story?
You know, not anymore. I think I just write whatever feels right. I'm a feeler when it comes to writing. I feel my way into and out of a story. But I mean, it just comes down to basics of writing. Like earlier today when I was teaching a kid how to write a story using imagery and the five senses, you know, we started with the very basic structure of a story. You know, the very beginning, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, the denouement. You know, like that's like the simple structure that works every time. Honestly, I would also like simplify Joseph Campbell's Heroes story, like where a character goes on a journey and it comes back forever changed, whether for good or bad. But it's really important that at the end that there's some sort of change, you know, whether for the character or for somebody else. And to me, that change makes all the difference. Even like my favorite kinds of stories, short stories, are the open-ended ones, and even those have a change. But what those stories do to take it to the next level is that the change is up to the reader. You know, it's not up to the writer didn't like have any definite like yes or no answer for them. You know, the reader has to decide what happens, and those kinds of stories are really awesome. I love those stories. Some people, it frustrates some people to have an open-ended thing like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you want to study structure for a story, the best examples are like the 5-act plays by William Shakespeare. He was like a master at creating those those really structured stories, depending on the type of story he was trying to tell. And I think the shorter you get, the more complex it becomes. Like flash fiction is really complex when it comes to telling a story. But the longer you get, the more easy it is to see the structure. So look at some examples. Again, the easiest one to find is probably any Shakespeare. You watch Leonardo DiCaprio in Romeo plus Juliet or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea of both. There are rules, but you can break the rules.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's good. Yeah.
I have a friend who's a writer. He wrote for television for a long time, and he told me you could do anything you want in a story as long as you don't bore the reader. You know, as long as you don't bore your audience, you could do anything.
Yeah. Great advice. Yeah. We have a question from Devin Roberts in New Jersey next. And Devin wants to know, what is a topic or aspect of your work you wish you could talk about more or wish more people asked you about? In other words, here is your soapbox, stand upon it.
I don't have anything political to say necessarily in my writing. I mean,
I don't think it has to be political. It could be anything.
Yeah.
Is there any?
Like,
yeah.
I definitely like to write about food. That's definitely, besides like the culture, I like to write about food. And I wish people asked me more about like what food story are you going to write next or something like that. But little clue about
what's your favorite food?
Oh, my favorite. Oh yeah, what's my favorite food? My favorite food is actually this Filipino dish is called caldereta, which is just beef stew. it's like, you know, beef, potato, red bell pepper, green olives. I mean, everybody makes it different. The most common base though is like tomato sauce and liver spread to make the sauce. But everybody does something different. Some people like add weird things to it. once my mom added pineapple in it, and it was not good. Some people put peas.
Never the pineapple.
Yeah, I'll never forget. That was the most terrible thing I ever had. But yeah, that's my favorite food.
All right. Well, so you got to talk about something you enjoy, which is food. A little bit.
That's definitely something I want people to ask me about is food.
Food
But also
and food
like
stories.
I think too is that my generation of Filipino American is very specific to my time and my there's no one Filipino American. There's no one Filipino. Everybody has different experiences with the culture, with the language, with food and everything like that. And it's so great that when I came out with this book, I found other people who have not read this type of Filipino American yet. You know, like there's a lot of Filipino American literature, but not about my generation. So like it's really like I'm like a lot of like messages from people who's like, man, nobody ever wrote this kind of story yet, like about our type of our time or whatever. So it was really good to get that kind of feedback and see that it resonated with people like that. So I hope to connect more with people like that of that generation that I wrote about. My generation, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, seeing yourself in literature is so important, and that you can help others do that is, it's really special. It's really a sort of amazing thing that you get to do as both a self-fulfilling, but also, sort of a community practice as well. We just have a few more questions here. I've really enjoyed chatting with you thus far. I don't want it to end, but we have about 4 more left. The next one comes from Leah Milne in Indiana. And she's curious about when you're writing, who's your primary audience that you're envisioning? And how do you balance the authenticity of your voice when it comes to reaching beyond that primary audience?
Yeah, you know what? This is what my publisher asked me to. It's like they figured my primary audience was going to be Filipino Americans, and like they're also asking me like, how is this going to reach audiences of people who are not Filipino American? And to me, like what resonates with everybody is just the values of relationships and family and finding your identity. I think everybody could resonate with those themes. But just because I'm writing this for one demographic or something doesn't mean I have to cater to everybody. I think that's the important thing that as a writer, we have to. I mean, as a writer, you're thinking about an audience as well, but you shouldn't always. I think sometimes thinking about an audience could hinder you if you're thinking about them too much. You always need to strive to write your most authentic self. What I mean by authentic self is writing exactly what the story needs, and having to explain too much in a story kills a story. But explaining enough creates color and value to a story that makes a reader want to like learn more. And we live in an information age where if people don't understand the language in the book, they can look it up in Google. If they're curious about like a particular food or something like that, they can look it up in Google. And we also like live in a time where it's acceptable to not be the same as somebody else. I think that's the most important thing, to embrace your difference from other people. and allow your audience to respond to that difference in kind, to accept that difference and learn, because people, your book is going to leave your hands. I mean, your writing is going to leave your hands, and somebody's going to take it for what it's worth. It's not yours anymore. It belongs to the audience now, and they're going to do with it whatever they will. But while it's yours, try to make it yours. Try to keep it yours. And I think that's the most important thing to do.
That last bit about like the idea that it's yours until you release it feeds in nicely to this question that Amanda Levesque from Maine asked. And she asked, when writing, were you ever uncertain about how you wanted to portray the Filipino American experience? Especially because, as you say, once you publish it and release it out into the world, it's there for people to judge as they may.
Yeah, so that there's that imposter syndrome. Back to the imposter syndrome. Sometimes I feel like, there's a thing with like first generation immigrants, like they never feel good enough to be part of that culture. As a Filipino American, I always like criticize myself and like, am I Filipino enough? Am I Filipino enough to be writing about this experience? But at the end of the day, it is my experience, my perspective about the culture and the language. And I think there's not always people who are going to agree or have the same experience. But what's important is that you put it out there. Like you're saying, like it's really important to other people that it's done and it resonates with the people that it could connect with. There's this writer who writes horror, queer horror, Chuck Tingle, and I went to go see him for his tour for his new book, Bury Your Gaze, and he talked about he writes for the alternate universe version of himself. He writes for another somebody who needs that book to read. Who needs to read it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's really important to think about that and not trying to please everyone. You can't. It's impossible to please everyone. But if you please those people that you want to please, that's a good step in the right direction.
The next question, I think, naturally progresses in kind of how what we're discussing here, how we're thinking about this. Allie Hall in New York asks, do you see your works as creating or strengthening legacies of the Filipino New Renaissance? Would you compare or group yourself with other artists like Tommy Orange or Carmen Maria Machado, who are also finding ways to weave cultural and personal capital into contemporary narrative? Wow,
that's a that's a high praise. It's a very nice compliment there. I can't speak for myself. Like I'm one of many Filipino American writers out there, and it is growing. There's a huge community now of writers. I mean, there was before. We had Carlos Bulusan. We have Jessica Hagedorn. We have Rick Barrett. We have, but like we also have like the contemporaries. Like I guess Rick Barrett's also contemporary, but we have like Mia Mansala. I think that's her name. Who writes the Arsenic and Adobo? Those.
Oh yes, I love those.
Yeah,
they're super fun, like the cozy mysteries.
Yeah, the cozy mysteries.
Yeah.
We have Randy Rebay, who writes a lot of YA that are really. I think he just won. He got a nomination for the National Book Award recently for one of his new books. And there's a growing demand, and I'm really proud of is that a lot of the younger generation is getting more involved in our culture. When I was younger, it was the complete opposite. Everybody did not want to celebrate their culture or learn about their culture. But now, because like it was like our parents, when they came here to the United States, they wanted us to not have a hard life. So they wanted us to assimilate as much as possible. Yeah. But now we have an opportunity to reclaim our culture. And this young generation is doing that. And I really love that. My nieces and nephews are part of, Filipino clubs. And my niece is even studying writing. So I mean, that's really awesome to me, because I never thought that there would be another writer in the family. So it's pretty cool to see that happen with the younger generation now. But like I really
Continue.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was.
No, go ahead.
I'm very flattered by even the question of maybe being part of that. I'm glad to be part of other Filipino writers out there who are telling our stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't say that I am familiar with the concept of the new Filipino Renaissance per se, but I can say that I am familiar with many of these other writers that you're speaking of, and I'm going to hold it up here, a nice little plug moment. Here's the book, Professional Lola. I myself, as an English teacher and NEHS rep, have read it, and I do think that you absolutely are working towards strengthening that legacy. And as you mentioned earlier, you're sort of like presenting a nuance and a version of this very what is it? It's an identity in diaspora, really.
Yeah, definitely. There's a whole dichotomy to the culture, and there's never one type of way of being Filipino, and I think that's why it's so important to tell as many different stories as we can. And yeah, I'm really excited for the future.
Yeah. So this is a great place to end. We have one last question. It comes from Michael Sunga in New Jersey. Michael wants to know, what advice do you have for teachers in the efforts to increase Asian American visibility in literature classrooms and across the curriculum?
Not just to read Asian American stories during Asian American Month. I mean, just I think it's really important to celebrate diverse stories out there, but like thematically, like incorporating stories of like any culture, multiple cultures throughout your curriculum is really important, just to show how diverse America is. We, as an English teacher, we think about canon literature, and canon literature is easy to fall back on because it's what we've been teaching for so long. But sometimes what we teach for so long becomes outdated and out of touch, and there are more contemporary examples that can teach the same thing. Not better, but in a different way that connects better with younger audiences. And it's really about, as a teacher, we need to grow. We're fluid people. We're fluid beings. Like we respond to the students that are in front of us. We grow with the students that are in front of us. So I think being fluid like that in your curriculum, not just teaching the same thing over and over again, is really important. I know it's hard, as a teacher teaching the same lesson plan, it's easier. It's easy to do. But when you incorporate new stories, you find different responses depending on like the different kinds of students you get. Your students change. You're not going to have the same students every year. Even refreshing it every like 4 years is important too. if not every year, like every 4 years or something. But that's one way that we could show kind of the diversity in the country. You know, I mean, a lot of, as English teachers, sometimes it's just we think it's just about teaching writing and reading, you know, and it's not. We're teaching whole life stories. We're therapists. So we're all sorts of things to our students. So it's yeah, it's really important we do it right.
I think that's great advice. Sprinkling it throughout, embedding it, you know, just like you would anything else on a regular basis for reinforcement. And yeah, I also think, you know, we talked about the idea of seeing yourself in a story. I think that's super important, both to see yourself in stories, and also if you're not reading a story about yourself, that you're reading a story that maybe you're learning something new about someone that's not like you.
Yeah.
So that was a good question for the NEHS moderators we have up there that would also be watching this as well. Well, I hate to say it, but our time has come to an end, EP. I have really enjoyed this conversation. It has been enlightening. It has been inspirational. And I think I can't wait for this newest collection to come out. I have to wait a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I hope to get it in your hands as soon as possible. Thank you for having me. Thank you, NEHS, for having me. Thank you for all the great questions out there, guys. It was amazing. Thank you so much.
All right, EP. Have a great night.
You too.
Well, that was wonderful. Thank you, EP. Thank you, Tara. Thank you all so much for attending this evening, and thank you for sending your questions to us for the interview. If you would like to watch the interview again, it will be made available on the Sigma Chi Delta and NEHS YouTube channel. If you go there, if you click the bell to subscribe, you'll receive updates and interesting video content from us as it is published. Quick reminder for NEHS student members and ELA student members about the current fall awards cycle. If you need any help or have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out about that. That's all for now, I think, but we'll be in touch, and we hope to see you at our next webinar with Jesnin Ward on October 16th. Good night.